So I'm super excited to have you on this morning. We're going to let a couple look. They did the same thing yesterday on here, ready to go. 4 people already. So I am Dr. Torri J. I'm the founder and CEO of the Fatherless Generation Foundation. And for the next couple of days, I'm going to just pop on and have some of my friends come on and talk about awesome work that they're doing. And we're going to just talk about some of the stuff that we think about, talk about behind the scenes, and hopefully it'll help you, whether you're in a family law case or you're a fatherless child or whatever the situation may be. And so today I have brought my friend, my Australian sister, um, Larah Thomson. And, I just want to sit and talk with her about mediation. She's a certified mediator and has had her own trials of her and her own journey. And I'll let her describe all of that. But Laura, thank you so much for being on with me this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Torri.
And I know it's early for you in Colorado. Yes, you might be Australian, but you are in Colorado. So
I just started blizzarding outside, so it's really awesome.
You're excited about the snow.
Oh yeah, always. I'm always looking forward to the next ski day.
That's true.
I do get away and do some skiing during the week. So anyway, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No.
I feel like we're kind of like getting out of the last year and bouncing back into the new year. So this is exciting.
Yes.
So I've got a frog in my throat. Excuse me for a second. So you brought me on here to talk about mediation. I'll give a bit of background of myself. I came to America in 1994. I'm educated through the University of Colorado in communications, and then I've gone to CSU, Colorado State University, to do mediation arbitration. And I really discovered, the mediation process through my own divorce in 2004. So by 2008/9, and moving into mediation myself, it was a perfect move for me because I had young children. I had divorced in 04/06 because that's how long it takes when you involve attorneys. In my case, I knew what was going to happen as far as the attorneys fighting each other. And so I delayed that process for a good 8 months. At about the 8-month mark, we were in court. And at that time, I was told by Magistrate Diane Dupree at the time, who has become a mediator since, actually. She never made judgehood, and for good reason, I think. She told me that I would be jailed within 30 days if I didn't get an attorney. So I obviously got an attorney, but that just made things even worse. And at this point, I'm in 15 years of litigation. Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
So, I'm sorry.
So she told you you're going to be jailed because I
wasn't represented. And they knew there was a lot for me to lose, maybe. But also, I just knew that it wasn't going to go well. And it didn't go well. I mean, we're talking about this 15 years process. I've spent a good $500,000. He's spent at least $1.5 million try to keep the boys away from me. For no good reason either. I mean, I don't do drugs. I don't have a DUI. I don't have a criminal history, except now I kind of do because of David, my ex-husband, and this process. So I obviously don't have a Colorado Bureau of Investigations issues, but when you're dragged into the court under the silver bullet process, which I'm sure people know about that, but essentially somebody finger points you as a domestic violent person, and then uses whatever hearsay information or anything. Oh, she's crazy, she's this, or he's that, he's got large hands, he put them on me, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the process is really excruciating, I think, for families. And let's be very clear. During those processes, your children and your relationship is affected. You can't pretend that all of these terrible financial, emotional, there's certain heartbreaks and heartaches that that your children aren't going to see them when your children are with you. And so these children are affected. And that's why I have continued the mediation process. And that's why I stand up, advocate for children, families, because I can tell people face to face, this is what could happen to you. And this is how bad it could get. And I'm not sure that I've come across any familial mediation process and problematic family dilemma that hasn't been as bad as my own. So then I'm actually really confident in helping these families to mediate and come to an agreement, which is an MOU, a memorandum of understanding.
Yep.
And if you've already had any type of divorce process, a stipulation to certain MOUs or agreements, and I stay out of it, honestly, as much as I can. I just say, well, these are your agreements. And I don't even do contracts anymore with these people, because why would they contract with me? This is their agreements as a family, you know?
So tell me, okay, so for those who, maybe they don't know they're going to enter a situation, or they're just entering a situation, what is mediation to you? Why mediation?
Well, first and foremost, I'm nowhere near the cost of an attorney, number one. And so you're already in a financial situation where you're trying to split assets, or you're trying to minimize the damage. And so I say to these people, look, don't be me. don't be giving your assets or your child's college money to an attorney. Work together, suck it up, have a good faith, have some good faith in myself and the process, because the mediator is the person that will get you to the place that you need to get to. The only problem these days is that so many mediators, and there's this false narrative that mediators have to be attorneys. Well, attorneys are litigators. What mediation is bringing the couple together. I mean, it could be a business situation. It could be a landlord-tenant situation. It could be just a divorcing couple, of course, and which is what I do mainly. But you work together to get agreements that are going to be in your interests and your children's best interest. And that means not dragging you through the mud when you're already in a emotional state, or you're already devastated by the ending of your marriage, whatever the case might be. And you've got children who are hurting too. You see a lot of children regressing through the process, whether they're young kids who don't get to see daddy as much anymore, or teenagers who are scared that their life is going to change monumentally. So it's really just, I mean, we always talk about the children's best interest. What about the couple's best interest, So.
And, something that you said that stuck out is when you walk into this situation, what about you? What about your thoughts? What about what you want? And I think so often people don't think about that first. They're fighting over a child in a different kind of way. Maybe it's not fully what they want. It's just they don't want the other person to get the upper hand.
Right.
And it becomes adversarial. We talked about this a little bit last night. And I feel like mediation is holistic. I feel like it's a holistic approach, because when you walk into a courtroom with litigation, it's a different thing. It's a different beast that it doesn't have to be. And there's lots of money involved in litigation versus the mediated process.
Right.
Go ahead.
As far as mediation goes, and I think you've heard me talk about this before, because we both obviously attended the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, which you're queen of. I think you've been to more than anyone.
I don't know if that's true, but if it is, I'm here. I'm here. Oh, whatever. Me and the founder. Okay. I'm here to support. That's what I'm here to do.
You're not on. I'm not even watching. Just kidding. So what I do,
I feel honored,
and I think you know this, is I do pre-mediation.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting down with each couple and really listening to the gripes, the problems, anything that I make sure that they know I heard them. And this could be for an hour, it could be for 3 hours. It depends who you are. Okay. And I get a lot of parents who are like calling, I want to tell you more. And I tell them, this is your chance to be heard right now. I want you to know that I know the history, I know some of the issues, and this is how it's going to help me to help you. Also, because it's cheaper within the pre-mediation process versus mediation together and those costs and an additional office space and that type of thing. It's going to be a lot cheaper than sitting down with any type of attorney. It's certainly going to be a lot cheaper than going into a courtroom and thinking that you'll be heard by a judge when, apparently to be heard by a judge in my case was to be told, well, you'll be jailed within 30 days if you don't get an attorney. So obviously I wasn't heard because she didn't hear that I didn't want to get into a $2 million divorce. So I like to help people understand, look, I know how you feel, and you will not get heard in the courtroom. You will not. You'll be, number one, normally discouraged by representing yourself. And then when you actually do get representation, you still aren't heard. They're heard, but you're not heard. So pre-mediation, I have no clue why more people don't do pre-mediation. Like, people look at me like I'm strange when I talk about that. And quite frankly, I think it's the best part about my mediation processes. And hopefully people will be learning, hearing what I'm talking about, and maybe even practicing it themselves within their own relationships. Because I got to tell you, I mean, pre-mediating just means communicating with another human being. Like, pick up the phone, do what we're doing, like see each other, look at each other's face to really hear each other. I mean, that's another thing. Like, within the mediation process, it's just hearing each other, and it's really hard to hear when it's so emotional. And your dreams just flew out the window. There's no long-term marriage. You have children, they might be hurting too. There could have been an issue within the marriage. Somebody is distrustful or something happened. People just want to be heard, by a professional too, not just calling your girlfriend and having a whinge about your marriage. It's, this is the finality of an agreement where you can try to stay as whole as possible in order to move forward and ahead. And I know you really get that, but I want people to really understand. You will never feel whole by paying. I've had $12,000 days in court. I mean, that will never make you whole. I don't care if you think it went well or not. Writing a check the next day for $12,000 is just like a major. That's a year's. That's a year.
I was going to say,
right?
That's someone's salary. That's someone's, like, some people barely make that, in a quarter. So to talk about doing that in a day is challenging for most, especially people who come to my program. They can't imagine. I mean, it's a struggle for them to pay the small fee that we require. And so we allow installments. But I can tell you, when you're even talking about mediation and before you even get to this place of being hostile towards each other, you're breaking up, or that it's over, sit down for the sake of your children and for the sake of yourselves, is what you're saying. Right. So that you cut it before, the blood starts really running. Right. There's no judge who can give you an order that's going to make a case go perfect. I think that's another, misnomer that takes place. Oh, I'm getting in front of the judge. Why? Yeah. He doesn't know you, or she doesn't know you. Right. And they're going to give you what they think they should give you, because there's no strict legislation in family law. Mm-hmm. It is according to the judge's discretion, which means based on how he feels or she feels about you, in a sense, around legislation that does exist, they can give you supervised visitation because mom or dad threw out a silver bullet, which is a false allegation. Right. They can say, you know what, you're going to take this supervised visitation just because my gut, my feeling, and there's no proof, there's no nothing. And I believe mediation helps you divert that kind of situation where there's no one who has your best interest at the table. So, when it comes to mediation from your perspective, because you have a 360-degree perspective. You've gone through this.
Right.
You are a mediator. What do you think are some of the first signs someone should pay attention to and then step into pre-mediation, like in their relationship? What are some of the first signs?
So you mean from others or within?
Within, like
Okay.
within their marriage, within their relationship, because
Sure.
not everyone's married who goes into this type of mediation.
Right.
What are some of the signs that maybe we should start moving towards pre-mediation with this?
Well, I mean, these days, apparently, at least 40% of people never even got married. So I think people need to understand. Okay, there is no winning in the family court because this is your family, not somebody else's family. So I think that should put up a big red flag. If you think you're going to win something, what you should be thinking about winning is the wholeness of the people involved, you and your partner, and then your children. I mean, a lot of people have children, and that's your greatest asset. Well,
Yeah.
well, if we know that best outcomes for children are equal shared parenting, why would you ever want less than what's important for your child? That I mean, and it sounds so easy, and I don't understand. And because of the Fatherless generation, that and what you do, how important it is to be whole. A
Yeah.
child is half and half. So I mean, let's keep the child whole. If you are not concentrating on your child being whole, then you're doing yourself and your children really big disservice, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing that sounds right about cutting the baby in half, right? And sharing. I mean, we all know as 2 and 3 year olds that we should be sharing things with others. We're taught to do that, and the people that aren't wanting to share, or they want the majority of assets, or they think they want large sums of child support monies. Well, good luck with what you think that's going to get you, because
Yeah.
ultimately getting a big chunk of money every month, it doesn't make up for children that aren't whole, that that walk around with part of their heart like that taken away, or dismantled because one parent wants more time than the other. Just be fair. So I don't really understand why people think there's so much to win. I mean, because quite frankly, like I said, a child who doesn't end up as a statistic is so much more important than any money. I mean, there's no money you can put on the pricelessness of a whole child, a child that feels loved and adored by both parents, who gets maximum time with both parents. And by the way, let's be clear about this too. Within the divorcing process, there is loss.
Right.
It's harsh sitting around waiting for your children for 12 days as a dad. Often, we know the statistics, mainly dads are kept from their children.
Yep.
They get every other weekend and a Wednesday night for dinner. Big deal. You're making your child a visitor when you do that.
Right.
Clear.
Some call it visitation in the midst of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, isn't it to you that like people just don't think, well, isn't the child going to miss? They don't get to see the parent overnight for 12 days. That's a long time for a baby or a child to not see, half of themselves.
Right.
So I really, I think, okay, we need to take the dirty word divorce out of the equation and just keep thinking about the wholeness of our children. Not even the best interest, because the best interests have been ignored for a long time. Adults should be able to understand what the sharing process looks like, and mediation is part of that, because you're not taking assets from each other. Because
Right.
ultimately, you are taking from the other person, which means you're taking from your children. So we need to get away from the dirty word, and just like you mentioned, that wholeness aspect, the holistic approach being mediation, and just getting an agreement together. Be a grown up. If you can't even stipulate to a memorandum of understanding in what would be the best interest of your family, how do you think you're going to raise these children together? And by the way, within the divorcing process, you're not making anything better. I mean, and the attorneys are litigators. They pick a side, just like the judge picks a side, because they're a litigator as well.
And sometimes your attorney has picked the other side because they don't believe you. It's just what it is. Yes.
I mean, let's be very clear. You do a financial affidavit to let your attorney, that's the first thing they ask you for. Please fill out this financial affidavit so we can see how much money there is for you to fight over, right? So what can you really afford? How much are you making every month? How much money can I charge you for one day in court? Oh, Larah Thomson, $12,000 for a day in court. She should be able to pay that back in a year and a half. I don't even know.
But people divert mediation. People say, no, I don't want mediation. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause this right here because we do have some questions. Okay. This question by Morgan. Morgan, you know, we have our challenges, but I'm gonna go here. She says, two women talking mediation in family courts. Almost all mediators are women, yet men still lose custody. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Because I know why I think it is. It's not just because women are mediators doesn't mean they understand. Doesn't mean they even are interested in understanding the other side of the story. So I'm going to ask you, Larah. Larah, why do you think women are mediators, and why do you feel like men are losing custody cases?
I think the women are mediators because we like to communicate and we like to talk as well. And this is a process where we're bringing people together. And it's like women who sit around and pick the berries together and talk about babies and communicate like in a community. Kind of. I think that's and you know the men are basically saying, I don't want to communicate that much. They're blocking the community discussion. I think women are willing to sit down and talk about some harsh issues. I think it makes us diverse because we can also be solo practitioners and we can also get together within groups and, you know, come up with agreements. I think women just want to communicate more. I think that's honestly. And then I think what they do within the practices, the law practices these days, is they make the paralegals, often females, do the communications or this lesser job of mediation because they can't charge as much for mediation than they would sending the male attorneys out to represent the families. So I think it's about communication, honestly, and women being more open to communicate. And by the way, the other thing is that 60% of females who are graduating from the bar these days are females. So there's going to be more females who and it's growing. Okay. Yeah. Females are taking over law practices, creating their own law practices, and they know that the first step is the judge is going to suggest mediation. Well, in the state of Colorado, I think that's just, go to mediation, try that first because it's good, but it's not practiced very often, and there's no rules set around mediation. So somebody who can just walk in, pretend they're there for good faith reasons, and then just simply walk out, which happens a lot. I try to make sure that doesn't happen within my practice. So as far as men losing custody, this has been set up a long time this way, that men are on the losing team. And it's really interesting for me because this goes against everything that happened in my world. So in my world, the man took and got everything in my personal case. So it's a little bit tricky because my mind goes in immediately emotionally. That's who I am. But as far as men losing, we've got a situation where we're acting like women. This is the 1920s versus 2020. And so we're handing these children over majority of time to moms, which makes no sense if you look at the social data and science. Children do better with maximum time with both parents. It's
Oh,
even within the statutes of best interests of children.
yes,
But
it is.
ignored. It's ignored time and time again. It makes me really upset because we wouldn't. It's such a big picture topic that Morgan's brought up, because there's so many problems that we've set up children to have: the opioid crisis, um, um, shooters in schools, the mental health crises, depression
Mm-hmm.
in our kids,
Suicide.
suicide rate,
Yep.
so many huge problems. And it makes me so angry because it's so avoidable. The only thing that makes sense is that that attorneys aren't working hard enough for their male clients. They are taking the status quo of women getting majority time, 27 days a month, and you might be able to get every other weekend and a Wednesday night for dinner, and not realizing, well, would you expect that for your own family? Would you? And
No.
how many attorneys do we know that are probably every other weekend dads? Probably not too many. Because why? Because they were smart enough to realize, oh, my kids actually need both parents and they'll do better, and our boys will thrive in that process. Um, I don't get it. I think it's really a really huge problem. Obviously, I'm doing my best to work on it this end. Um, and we have a project going, which is Cash and Prizes, and we're going to be doing we're already doing a documentary, but the process is changing.
Yes, I saw
We're
that.
trying to work out, like, what happened, where did we go so wrong with custody issues, and why are we accepting men to be so disposable? Why would we ever think that it's a really good idea to split up families, to take children away from their fathers, especially? And this happens to mothers too.
Yes.
It happened to
It
me.
happened to you, right? And
So,
and that's the part, Morgan, I can tell you, we have gone back and forth a few times on my wall. There is an issue with women and how they flow and move through this situation. But one of the reasons I wanted you on is because you're not only a mediator, but you've experienced this. And when you have individuals who have experienced some aspect of fatherlessness, father's rights, custody battles, it gives them a different perspective. It gives
right,
them a different worldview. And that worldview can cause them to be a solution driver versus a person who just gets online and is the victim. And
right,
that's what I need Morgan to understand. I get that we're two women on here talking, but there are men who I'll bring on, and I've brought men on before. But I wanted, number one, to show the diversity, because way too often people sit here and say fatherlessness is a Black issue. And it's not.
right.
It's
No,
what's been placed on TV. Can we have you ask that question, Morgan, versus the other questions? Why is it always an issue when children are without a father in the home or not being raised with their father, and they're only getting 10 to 12 days out of the month, if that? Why is that a Black thing to most people? Why do people only see it that way when that's not really what's going on? And so I want to bring women, men, everybody on here, clients that I've had previously, because we have to change this narrative.
right.
And I heard what you said, even about, the question about why are more women mediators. I can't answer why more women are entering into this legal field. I can tell you that when it comes to my pro bono help, I get majority women who say yes. And most of them have a yes because they know someone who's been through this, or they know, they've had clients that they've wanted to help, but they didn't know how to vet them properly. And because I vetted them, they're saying yes. I call men, sometimes they're not so eager, and that's just, maybe they're busy. I don't know what the issue is, but Morgan, I don't know if it's a male or female issue. And why do I feel like men are still losing in courts? I think it's just a system that's set up to actually create it that way. It's a villain victim scenario, like we talked about last night. And as you said earlier, Laura, it's who has the bigger hands. Well, most times it's a man. And so he's going to be the one who's painted as the villain.
Right.
And so he's the one who tends to make more money. That's changing. However, I have seen women who have made more money and they end up on the flip side, like Laura here. And so I don't know if it's a male, female. I think it's starting to push towards money. And why would you want to sit in a courtroom with someone who does not know you and ask them to dictate the future of you and your children? I don't know why. And why would you go to mediation, like you said earlier, and go in there and pretend like you're in there to actually mediate and then walk out at the end of the day?
Right.
Mediation is the best possible holistic solution for you and your family, because as much as we don't want to call our exes, our ex-spouses, our family, they are. Like,
Right.
you have children with this person. You're going to have to grow up. Your son plays for Duke, right? So you've got to show up to basketball, football games, and all these other things, and your ex is there. And then you
They're
have
not going to play.
weddings that are going to come up and child births, and be grandparents together. Unfortunately, sometimes that's our family at the end of the day. And mediation is always the best avenue. I heard you say also that Colorado kind of says it flippantly. Well, I am blessed to be able to work in a lot of different states. And some states are flippant with it. Other states are like, get to mediation, work it out there. Litigation is the very last resort. I can tell you Georgia is that way. Mississippi is another one that's that way. Where else have I been that I've seen that? Texas can be that way, but you kind of have to set it up properly for it to work out that way. Kentucky has mediation, but I can tell you I haven't seen people be very successful with it. So we do move to litigation pretty quickly. But that's the part I love about Georgia.
Right.
Oh, my husband, he chimes in. So there was a point where I had to go back and forth to South Carolina for a client. And as I was going back and forth, and I know the picture somewhere in my Facebook stuff. I'll have to show it today and repost it. But there was literally a drive-through drop-off for your papers. They literally had a drive-through. And there was a sign like, drive through this way. And I was just like,
Let the kiss and go. The kiss of death and go.
It's like, what do you mean drive through? So I had to ask this question. So my husband, he remembers all these stories, so he's chiming in. But literally, there was a drive through. And I'm like, how does that actually work? Because if you're driving through, just dropping off papers, I promise you, your process won't be a drive through. It's going to be a lot longer than 5 seconds. So, for me, I want to ask this last question, and I'm going to get you off here because I promised you 30 minutes. I told my husband I'm leaving people with questions and all of that stuff. Let me also go here. Women like solutions, at least I do. So one of the reasons I mediate is because I'm coming out with some solutions. That's what I want. I don't want, you can come in there and complain all day long. You can come in there with, oh, he did this or she did that. And once we're done with that, what's the solution? Right. What is the solution? That's where I want to get to. So let me get here. Linda says, how would you feel about passing legislation of moving child custody agreement out of the court and into a divorced family counselor? Quit treating children as property and move to treating them like human beings. How do you feel about that?
I actually really like that idea because she's right. Linda's right. There shouldn't be one discussion about here's our property and another discussion about our children. Yeah. Property is for the courts of equity, okay? The family court is not a true court. It's an administrative process. They say that they follow the court, whatever your state is, the court of civil procedures. If it's not a civil court, what is it? And quite frankly, like you said, why should a judge be in charge of your children and telling you how often you're allowed to see them? It doesn't make any sense. These children are God-given. They're not property, as Linda's bringing out. I think it all should be. I think mediation, honestly, to assist the family with healing in, like you talked about, a holistic approach to setting up agreements. Because what you're doing is when you set agreements and you make choices for your family, it empowers the couple. It helps them with their children. Their children see them cooperating. They don't see them through court for 2 years. Obviously, a family court facilitator, you could call them, or a counselor, as Linda mentioned, could be the person to do that. And by the way, why should somebody with a law degree be choosing a child's psychological future splitting this child up between parents when they have no child psychology history. I mean, they don't have any history to say, to even know what's the best life outcomes for children within a divorcing process. Is it really best for a child to be involved with this court process for years on end? I remember my 13-year-old son begging me not to go back to court, begging me. He'd been in that courtroom with his parents basically since he was 4 years old. How dare that court? How dare that court give me another document at year 15? My children had just both gone to college. They're both freshmen in college, and I'm still getting documentation saying in the marriage of Thompson versus Thompson. That can't be okay for children. It's not okay for me. How can it be okay for our kids? Our children deserve so much more than what the courtroom offers them these days.
Absolutely.
And that is why mediation is so critical. And who could argue that it's not in their best interest to be dragging their mother through the courtroom for a 15th year? Who would argue that? And
I remember when you called and told me that. I was like, what do you mean? I was so confused. I was like, because I remember you dropping your son off at college, your last son, and we were talking about you being an empty nester. And if you could have seen my face, I was like, I don't understand.
And again, I'm a mediator who's in and out of the courtrooms all the time. Now, I will not turn up for court, and I tell everybody these agreements that you came to prior to maybe something not working out or a further stipulation to certain court documents. I mean, I'm sorry, but I will not turn up to court for you to discuss that, because that was within a mediation process, which is, it's got nothing to do if you choose the court process. So your attorneys and your hearsay and all the drama that you want to drag your partner through, all that does is hurt you and your family. And I don't know what else to tell you. And I certainly, if I might have turned up once simply to notify the court that I had nothing to say. That's all. I mean, mediation is a safe place, and it should be a safe place. And I don't understand why more people aren't excited about mediation, because all I'm doing is saving you money. Oh, and your sanity. Plus, you can actually enjoy your children moving forward. Don't be like me. Don't be like me. And, I want to say, probably the best mentor I had for mediation and the divorce process is my own parents. I think I let you know about this a long time ago, but my mother moved next door and co-parented with my dad. So
I didn't know that.
We had our own compound, essentially, with 5 children, mums in one house, dads in the other house, right? And all we do is run back and forth. So my dad drove me to school every day, okay? Because I was a daddy's girl, and I did sport in the morning and sport in the afternoon. And my dad, so even though my parents divorced when I was 9 years old, I was never a child of divorce, because my dad was right next door if I needed him. And so I actually have, in years gone by, congratulated my mother for probably being the best source of information and co-parenting opportunities that I'd ever seen. Like I didn't even know it could be this bad, right? So it's so interesting. So I didn't feel like a child of divorce. And there's another issue. Maybe parents should buck up and live as close as possible so their kids can get on bikes even.
I wonder.
Right?
How would that work? And I was going to ask you the last question of how do you not allow your situation to impact how you mediate? But you just answered it. You grew up in a different, it gave you a different perspective, a different viewpoint that most people will never get. Right. I know there's some people who get that, because I know someone now who's a producer, and he lives literally like 10 houses from his separated spouse, because they're not even divorced, but he lives like 10 houses down. And it's because he wanted to make sure that he was close to her and the children. And so what do you say to that? I think that's remarkable.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
I also had I have another unique aspect of all of this too, because for the first 6 to 7 years of my divorce, we had 50-50 shared equal parenting and lived in the same zip code. My kids could have gone on bikes and gone to their dad's house if things had continued the way that they should have continued. At some point, the kids are 12 and 13, 6-7 years ago now. But at that point, I became an every other weekend dad. I didn't even get Wednesday nights for dinner. I got Friday and Saturday nights. So what happened within that process is I've seen my children thriving within a shared equal parenting, situation, familial situation, and then mum being ripped out of their lives, and then my sons both getting eating disorders, and then not thriving, and then me just getting more educated and just jumping onto the football fields to see my kids as much as possible, making sure they know I'm there, all the time as much as possible, and just they would sneak out see me, I'd sneak see them, and just do it as much as possible, just to try to make them as whole as I could before they went to college. And so I've really seen that dynamic too. So I know very personally how this affects kids, and how my own sons and how I was treated. It never feels good, back to Morgan, it never feels good to be a second-class citizen within your own children's lives. And that can't be good for them. It's certainly not good for you. And kids deserve more than that, don't they?
They absolutely do. And so I want to thank you for coming on and us having this discussion. I'm going to put your information in the chat box here. Let me make sure I do this right too while we're sitting here. Because we could go on and on about this conversation, and I know we could.
Let's do a part two.
We can definitely do a part two. I need to make sure people are aware, not only aware of the problem, but aware of the solutions that exist. So, okay, Larah, give me your contact information for mediation.
So it's my name at gmail.com. So LARAH Thompson, THOM, no P, SON, at gmail.com. My phone number is 303-242-2660. The other thing we could do is we could do a, what would you do scenario within mediation processes. And it's so interesting because time and time again, we have this situation that a couple really thinks that there's no way that they can mediate. And because I'm not emotionally involved, I come up with, something that can work for both of them. And this is how I get the MOU, the memorandums of understanding, their agreements done, because I come up with a plan. Because there's always a solution. Let's be very clear. Yep. You might not get everything you want, but you get as much as you can get if you're being fair-minded. And it could take time. Sometimes it takes 24 hours to marinate for some parents on giving up something. And then I'm suggesting to them, well, this is how it's a gain for you, right? A gain for your child, more importantly. And that's, being a child-centered mediator. And that's why it always helps, because I get the parents to really understand, well, this is what your child needs and wants, trust me. And I think they know that at the end of the day. And, I know it. I also know that parents really want their children to be whole.
That's the word.
They really do.
Yeah. That is the word. Because what we know is most children pay the ongoing price for their parents' divorce and breakup.
Right.
And then after that, they receive little to no fathering after their parents' relationship ends. And so when you're talking about that wholeness that children need, that's what we're trying to get at right there. Right. That is why we don't need children to have little to no fathering. I know we don't think the men that we chose are the best, or they walked away, or whatever it is. Your children still need their fathers, whether you need them or not. And so,
especially boys with dads, especially because they see a dad. They need to see their dad stepping up. They don't want to feel denied that opportunity. And little girls they worship their dads.
Yep.
Um,
Just like you
I
did.
did everything to impress my dad. Are you kidding me? I did everything. I'm still doing everything. My dad is 97
Oh, wow.
on January 18th. I'm still doing stuff. I'm sending him parts of our produced documentation around veterans and how veterans get so screwed over in the family courts. And I'm sending that to my dad so he can check this out because he's an ex-vet. He was in the Air Force flying planes. And I want him to know the projects I'm working on because of him, you know? So, I'm never going to say dads need, fathers more, girls or boys do, but we do know the social science that says especially young boys, teenage boys, young boys need their dads, especially in teenagehood. They
Yeah.
need there. They get angry when they do not have them.
Yeah.
And then girls do the daddy complex if they don't have their dads either. And let's be clear, let's just be fair. Let's just argue that both parents are equally as important because that's a fair-minded construct.
Yes.
And let's move forward with completing and helping your child as much as possible to be whole so that they don't hurt anybody else in the future. Let's just do our best with that. It's so simple. Let's just be fair, young kids have a very strong construct about fairness and sharing.
Yes, they do.
Let's do it as adults, So,
And let's be that example.
yeah,
So,
let's do that.
Thank you so much for coming on talking with me today. And I know you are still like, what time is it here? So you're like behind. So you're 2 hours behind Atlanta. So New Year's won't hit for you for later, but I know that it's already hit New Year's in Australia. So
oh yeah,
you already said Happy New Year's at home. So Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, darling.
And we will see you soon. All right.
I'm really excited for our projects together in 2019.
Yes. I think I'm there in May. I'm in Colorado in May. I think March. It's March. So I'm going to see the snow and I'm going to get to go. Yeah. I haven't skied in a long time, so I may have to do the bunny slope again. But I am
behind my skis.
Okay. I'm coming. I'm going to come see that beautiful snow. All right, love. I will talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.